I was born in a gunfight. Or at least right after one. Someone had tried to murder my mom. The man whose father had been killed by my father, actually in a gunfight, and he came for revenge. Fortunately, my dad was able to save my mom and me, and after that we lived happily ever after. Kind of. My name is James Pieratt, and I'm about to run a 200-mile ultramarathon across the hottest desert on the planet. Best job in the world. Erica, morning. Huge help.
Absolutely.
Let's get the pack loaded up. This is that sweatshirt that Barbell made up for me. My personal motto, Hokahe, on the sleeve. That was from Crazy Horse before he rode down and wiped out Custer. He mounted up with his men, and he didn't give any grand speeches or any major military posturing. He just looked at him and said, "Hokahe. It's a good day to die." And they rode out and made history. Figure that's as good a motto as any, right? Lord, protect him. Keep him healthy. Give him strength and resilience he never knew he had. We pray safety over the crew and logistics, safety over his body and mind. It's never a James Pieratt ultramarathon without a big, goofy hat. Copied this from the Marathon monks of Japan, an ancient sect of Buddhist monks that run like a 7-year-long ultramarathon, and they use these big hats to protect themselves from wind, rain, sun, all of the above.
I'm Joe, and I'm James's cache and campsite support guy.
Joe here is handling my food caches, so he debatably has the most important job in terms of survival.
So I kind of help with a lot of his logistics in terms of finalizing where he's going to camp out for the night. We want to make sure that he's finding areas that are relatively flat because you don't want to be camping on a slope. You also want something that's not too far off the trail so that he can find it easy, A, in the dark, B, when he's 150 miles in and absolutely gassed. And you still want it to be protected enough from wildlife and other passersby, since a majority of this is on the PCT. Essentially, the goal is you want to make sure when he's undergoing such a crazy, strenuous event, he has all of his calories taken care of, but not just his macronutrients. He's really big into his micronutrients as well.
Scratch recovery, it's basically just carbs, but it also has proteins and electrolytes, and then I add some creatine to it. 600 or so calories, hundreds and hundreds of grams of carbohydrates, and like 60 grams of protein, all right here. So this pack is ultralight. It's actually made from military bulletproof fabric, naturally water resistant, so I don't need a bag liner, anything like that. Want to fill the pack? Pretty good. We're at like 32 pounds right now, 32.1. See you this afternoon?
Yeah, enjoy, my friend.
I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for coming down. Appreciate it. Thanks for looking after everyone for me.
Of course.
I'll always find my way back to you. Love you too.
My name is James Pieratt.
And my relationship to James is I'm his wife. If you meet him, you're going to instantly love him and connect with him. He's such a person who really has so much love in his heart for what he does and for the people around him. He's honestly one of the strongest people I know too. He does so many amazing things and amazing feats in terms of his workouts, his routines, his discipline. You give him a challenge and he'll instantly say, yep, sure, no problem. He's very open to just going for things, trying new things, and challenging himself in ways that, you know, most people wouldn't think to challenge themselves. Like with this run. Like 200 miles in 4 days is pretty awesome and amazing, but to do it in the desert, pretty much independently unsupported, and just taking it day by day, forging through anything that comes his way and any challenge.
Well, honestly, the first word that pops into my head when describing James is a maniac. So that's quite literally the way I describe him.
He's kind of just like a wild animal in human form. Like the dude is an apex predator, and it's one of the most impressive things I've gotten to watch happen in real time. He is, in a word, persistent. He finds the hardest ways of doing things and makes them look easy beyond compare. He's constantly innovating and trying to figure out what the next challenge is and the smartest way to master it.
He's probably 40% crazy, 60% gut check. He has to have some sort of inherent desire to push himself past his breaking point. 200 miles in the world's hottest desert, continuing to focus on making sure every bit of that 200 miles is in the hottest portion is absolutely off the wall.
We got super lucky with the weather. The day I got down here, they were already starting to cool off. But I mean, we chose this time of year because it was a good balance between the nights not being super freezing and the days not being, you know, crazy hot. As of now, it looks like the weather is supposed to be 30 degrees cooler during the day than it has been, and still pretty reasonable at night. So I'm not going to get too overconfident, but crossing my fingers, it'd be cool if that holds up for the next few days. I get asked a lot of times if it's lonely to do what I do. The truth is, it's not. If anything, it makes me appreciate the relationships I have more. For some people, I could see how that might be a bigger obstacle. But for me, it's peace, it's solitude, it's a highly meditative experience. And there's no crutches, there's no one else around for me to lean on, no one for me to look to, no one to motivate me. When I feel doubt, or when I experience hardship, or when I have an issue or an injury, it lies entirely to me to address it, to fix it, to troubleshoot it, and to keep my mind on track, my feet moving forward.
I like getting that first 30 out of the way, because after that, that's when I start to really feel most like myself.
The Sonora Desert is the hottest desert on Earth according to surface temperature. Recently they did a satellite scan of the entire Earth, and they measured the surface temperature of everywhere on the planet. And the Sonora Desert registered at 177 degrees, which was the hottest they had ever seen.
The crew behind the crew?
Yeah. Chasing James the whole time.
Seriously, how do you feel after that one? I'm tired. I hear that.
Imagine how James feels though.
Seriously, oh my God. He told me he smelled moisture when he left the desert.
Going into this event, I was prepared mostly to deal with the heat, the sun, the fact that there wasn't going to be a lot of shade, and then obviously the scarcity of water. So I trained and prepared mostly for that, and for the most part we succeeded. The one thing that we couldn't quite adjust for was just the sun itself. Even with the sunblock, my legs became badly sunburned on the first day. Going into the second day, it was already like painful to move. The skin was, starting to blister in certain spots. So on the second day, I actually ended up covering my legs with mud to block the sun even further, because the sunblock alone wasn't doing it.
My role supporting him during this run is basically making sure his feet are clean. Every checkpoint, like, I'll have some dry socks for him. I'll bring meals if he needs it, fuel. I'm basically here for any physical support he needs. So this is him here. So he's going to be following the trail all the way over, and then he'll meet us right here. So just like a couple miles more.
What do you think his total mileage is so far?
So far, I would say probably 25, maybe 30. That's just my guess, I don't know. But I think he was saying from each camp, it's about 40 miles or so.
When I first got introduced to James earlier last year, it was through his Instagram account, and he was talking about gladiatorial fitness. And that's not really a field that has been explored very much. Historical fitness as a whole is on a revival, but it's not as in-depth. Usually it's more 1920 strongman than, Roman gladiator. So I bought the program, and then I saw he had more, so I bought all of the programs, and I reviewed them independently, and was like, wow, this isn't something that I have seen before in the mainstream fitness industry. And how in-depth his research was, just talking with him afterwards, like his notes that he had on these civilizations, it was unlike anything any other influencer had done. I know he doesn't like to be referred to as an influencer, but unfortunately we all are.
We were just talking about the highlights from UFC 300 and how Max Holloway's fight was probably the greatest UFC bout we've seen. And it got him into a 30-minute tangent about Maori warriors and the history of Maori culture and Hawaiian fighters.
So one thing that separates me from other runners is I use ancient training stuff, traditional training, like tribal stuff specifically. The Apache and Navajo runners and Fox tribe runners of North America, the Maasai, the Zulu of Africa, the ancient sect of marathon monks in Japan. I study their methods and replicate those in my training because, first and foremost, it's just more fun. You have to understand is these guys were doing incredible things. Things at the same level of or beyond the feats of athletics seen today by modern athletes who are on steroids with completely high-tech training facilities, recovery facilities, stem cell treatments, all these things. And yet, 1,000 years ago, there was a guy, a Viking warrior, who lifted a 1,400-pound ship mast. Every single top-name modern strongman on steroids tried that and was unable to do it, with one exception of Half-Thor Bjornsson, played the Mountain in Game of Thrones, and he's generally considered to be the strongest human alive today as a combination of both his genetics and his training, but also modernity. All of the modern supplements and performance-enhancing drugs, facilities, all that. I look at that and I'm like, how the hell was a guy who was living on fish and potatoes 1,000 years ago that strong? How was he training? How was he living? And I know a lot of people might sound a little sketch, like, well, I don't know, man, like, are you romanticizing ancient stuff? And the truth is I'm not, because we still see it today. The best, or at least the most dominant mixed martial arts fighter of all time was an Avar tribesman from Central Asia named Khabib Nurmagomedov. Recently, a bunch of girls wearing dresses and sandals from the Raramuri tribe started competing in actual, like, professional ultramarathons, and they were smashing people. Like, not, like just smashing. In terms of credibility of ancient or tribal training methods, it's right there. You ask yourself how this is. The truth is that for all of the technology and advancement we have relating to physical training, we do not live in a culture that centers around it, okay? Our culture is more convinced with reality TV who won or lost the latest election than they are with living the lifestyles of warriors or of super fit messenger runners. When you build a culture around something entirely, and that culture lasts for hundreds and hundreds of years or thousands of years, you are going to learn a lot about physical training. In America, we've only been focusing on this, you know, with any degree of consistency and widespread adoption for the last 100 years or so. So even with our technology, that's just a drop in the bucket. The ancient Greeks were around 500 years or more at something close to their peak. They had Olympic Games. They had entire societies like the Spartans dedicated to the pursuit and perfection of physical and mental training. You think maybe they know a thing or two that we don't? It would be extremely arrogant to assume not. I use those same approaches in my training, from Apache breathwork, which is going on runs, particularly runs on hills, with a mouthful of water and keeping that water in your mouth the entire time to force nasal breathing. I run using the pacing and training methods of tribes like the Raramari. I strengthen my joints with exercises used by the lion hunters of the Maasai tribe in Africa. I might be known as a long distance runner, but I'm actually a much better sprinter than I am a long distance runner. These are all things that I look at in my training, and I look at them in my nutrition too. Maybe 10 years ago, spirulina, and you know, it's a microalgae superfood, became super popular. Thing is, spirulina was used for hundreds of years by Aztec runners on runs to keep their micronutrients up. They were 500 years ahead of us on that one. And this is not at all uncommon. You can say the same thing about chia seed. The Raramuri, speaking of, or also known as the Tarahumara, they make an energy drink for their runs using chia seed. It's really important to look at these ancient and tribal societies for the wisdom in their training. And if anyone doubts that, you just look at me, look at what I've done. I've only been working out for 5.5 years now. I used to be a heroin junkie. I wasn't a professional athlete. I didn't come from professional sports. I had zero training. I started doing calisthenics in prison, that was it. Push-ups, pull-ups, burpees. Other than growing up in the mountains, chasing bear alongside my dad, that was the only training I had. It wasn't like I came in some crazy genetic freak. I came in as a normal dude. I've been training in ancient styles for 5.5 years now. I own, what, a couple of world records, or at least I broke them, never registered them. Done some pretty cool stuff, including running across the entire state of Oregon, across the highest possible route in that state. And I've done some stuff I'm just very grateful for, and had a good day or two along the way. So if ever you need a convincer for the validity of training with ancient or tribal methods, nutrition, etc., just look at me. The universe doesn't always dance to your rhythm, but that's part of why it's important for me at least, to do stuff like this, because it reminds me and it teaches me to troubleshoot on the fly, and it really applies pressure to your personality. Everyone's a tough guy when they're well-fed and warm and, you know, well-rested. But it's situations like these, when you see who keeps going, who drops off, who keeps calm, you know, who freaks out. I was raised by bear hunters, and it's that calm under pressure and that focus and efficiency and competence despite fatigue and cold and hunger. And I know today a lot of people, whether they're runners or influencers or, you know, just people in general, kind of talk a lot about hard work, and they talk about it like it's extra credit or like you deserve some pat on the back for it. And I don't know, maybe you do, but the way I was raised, it was attendance, not extra credit. Everyone there worked hard. Everyone showed up with grit and discipline and, you know, work ethic. So If you had that, you were just an average guy. You weren't anything special. And I grew up seeing people, not just the bear hunters, but the farmers and ranchers and laborers doing all sorts of work. I mean, 16-hour days, 18-hour days, multiple shifts. And I don't think I ever heard anyone complain about it at all. So it's, I guess it's just the way you look at things. You just remind yourself that you're lucky to be wherever you are, you're lucky to be there. And I'm certainly lucky to be here, so don't bother me too much. Little food, little sleep, little dust off of the feet, and we'll be back at it. So it's 50 miles down, little light work. Now's where it gets interesting. Now is where men and the boys show themselves. We got brisket, beans, and potato salad that Janae went and got before they closed hours ago in one of the nearby towns. Usually I just eat the freeze-dried meals, just like rice and chicken, the simple ones. You know, rice and venison, whatever. Easy to digest on my stomach. Protein, carbs, but little real food's really, really nice on the trail. I'm not quite used to it, and I'll plan on getting used to it, but when possible and when we're close enough to some sort of road, or in this case an old graveling, old logging road, I won't say no to it. I did a 22-mile stretch today with no water, no fresh water. I try not to carry too much water, but I also try never to be completely out. As I worked back towards the hills, I ran into like a lot of switchbacks. It just kind of slowed me down. It was hard to build a rhythm. And then I just kept having to cross these creeks. I think there was 5 or 6 of them. And it just kept slowing me down and breaking my momentum. But not too bad overall. I just need to let this stuff dry, get my feet taken care of, and get some food in me. And I don't know what time it is, but get like 5 hours of sleep. And then everything should be dry by then. And I should be up and moving before the sun. So the landscape was just incredible in both its harshness and its beauty. It was just granite and red rock as far as you could see all around. There were cactuses, some of them were giant cactuses, as big as trees. There were these massive yucca plants that looked beautiful but had these really sharp spines jumping off in every direction at the tip of their every little shoot. There was constantly small little animals that would scurry here and there, lizards, several snakes, a sun-parched landscape of death where it seems like nothing could survive, and it's just teeming with life and beauty. And then at night, all of that comes to life under an endless blanket of stars. It's almost like an alien world, because you're out there and there is just this amazing contrast between the harshness and danger of everything around you and the immense beauty and fullness that you feel when you look at it. Oh, going pretty good. Legs are a little shot, but you can get some carbs and some salt and get it on the move, and then save my brain break till the next save my
main meal for the next stop at Montezuma. Top off my water and change my socks there. My stuff stayed wet all night. Best I could with the spares, but socks are wet. Everything's wet. We thought we'd come to cross the hottest desert on earth. I think you'd be happy to see a creek. And you are the first time, it's easy water. Then you gotta cross a bunch, back and forth over that same creek, getting wet. The creek might be the hardest part about this whole desert so far.
Yeah, some of the dangers that James is facing out of this environment are, obviously the elements, temperature fluctuations. We have kind of a varied environment. It goes from full-on desert to more mountainous terrain. There's rattlesnakes, there's mountain lion, pretty sure coyote also roam these areas. Not to mention all the insects, different kinds of spiders, scorpions. It's just a very unforgiving terrain.
It's a big ass snake. No rattler.
For the untrained person, a lot of dangers out there in the PCT. He already told us he ran into a few snakes and it slowed his time down a bit. And number two, the wind picks up when you get down into the valley. And when he's going around the mountains, you really gotta, it's a very narrow trail. You can't really misstep there and he's gotta be locked in.
Going into the second day, we saw that the heat was supposed to go down. We thought the climate was going to be more favorable, and we thought that was a good thing. What we didn't realize was that the temperature was going down because there was a massive windstorm coming in, and the wind went from being a nuisance to being, somewhat difficult, and escalated into an all-out windstorm.
He was looking fantastic the first day, but after a couple creeks, a couple steep hills, starting to get a little wobbly. But for James Pieratt, that's not much different than a normal workout for him. Weather and climate is going to be pretty big. He's on some pretty steep hills, and the wind can get pretty heavy. And with the distribution being a little wider than he's used to with the pack, as opposed to just a body run, that can get kind of dangerous on steeper hills. This area as well, he's ran into a couple snakes. Nothing too bad so far, but nothing to say that it couldn't be.
When you're out alone on the trail, the solitude can indeed it's a challenging aspect of it. Most ultramarathon runners don't spend that much time alone because they're on preset race courses with aid stations and checkpoints every few miles, so they can see their team, they can see other runners as the races go on. The way that I run with the solo wilderness ultras, there's none of that, so the solitude is palpable. For me, that's always been the appeal, at least as much as the running. Growing up, I always idolized the monk on the mountaintop training martial arts alone, the rugged mountain man forging difficult environments by himself. And I've never really minded being alone. I get asked a lot of times if it's lonely to do what I do. And the truth is, it's not. If anything, it makes me appreciate the relationships I have more. For some people, I could see how that might be a bigger obstacle, but for me, it's peace, it's solitude. It's a highly meditative experience, and there's no crutches. There's no one else around for me to lean on, no one for me to look to, no one to motivate me when I feel doubt, or when I experience hardship, or when I have an issue or an injury. It lies entirely to me to address it, to fix it, to troubleshoot it, and to keep my mind on track and my feet moving forward. So for me, the solitude is a positive, if anything. Reminded me of my dad. So I got it after he passed. It's a pattern, an old pattern we had seen on a native blanket together some time ago. And so it'd make a good tattoo. Sometimes companies will hit me up, and even though I don't do sponsorships in the traditional way, every now and then someone will hit me up with a product like Barbell Apparel. Anyone who's seen me sees it's pretty much a place I do all my shopping. They're helping out with this event, and they asked nothing in return. They literally, they were just like, we just want to see cool people doing cool stuff and help them do it. And they didn't ask me to peddle their stuff, never tried to pay me money or do anything that they knew I wouldn't be comfortable with. They just asked how they could help. I like that in a company. I've been approached by other big name shoe companies and other stuff, and just said thanks, but no thanks. It's just not really for me. The corporate stuff just doesn't ring my bell. But working with a small group of savages towards an aim that I believe in does. That's why I'm such a big fan of the people at Barbell. And then of course the stuff they make is just amazing.
In this recovery blend, it's not just like a protein-based powder. It actually has a whole bunch of carbohydrates, which is the #1 resource that James is going to be depleting throughout this whole excursion. So for right now, I mean, he talked about it with his soda comments after his first night. You want as many carbs as you possibly can when you're running 200 miles. He's probably burning 15,000 calories a day right now at this pace. So he's trying to get all of that energy back so he doesn't just have lactic acid and cramps all day long.
Bag of pink salt in the pocket. You feel yourself getting a little sore, take a little pinch, put it in my mouth, rinse it down with my, there we go, my hose right here. Good to go. Salt it up, stay salty. And get the body to turn back on. Funny thing is, like, run long enough, your body gets super sore and locked up, but you run some more and that problem goes away. So seems like an easy fix to me. The nights are more difficult. You got to move slower at night because you're dealing with a lot of, like, you know, high cliffs, drop-offs, treacherous areas, potentially venomous snakes. You had venomous centipedes, venomous scorpions, and you just can't see as far ahead, so you don't really know what you're dealing with. So you can't really cover, you know, your running pace itself is going to be slower. At the same time, you kind of do look forward to the nights because the way that I had it set up was like I'd stop for a few hours every night and, you know, get some sleep on my back, real sleep, and, you know, some sort of meal in me, and then reset and go back out before dawn. So at the same time, it's like, you know, the nights are going to slow you down and they're more hazardous in terms of safety, but you also kind of look forward to them because that's when you get your reset, you get to recalibrate, and, you know, if your mind is starting to like, you're starting to experience doubt or, you know, any negative feelings, your mind's starting to spiral at all, that's the point where you can sit down with yourself, reset, you know, recalibrate, and reattack your situation. You look forward to the nights, but you also dread the nights. And then of course it's also the most magical time because you're out there under a, you know, a massive blanket of stars overhead in an empty desert with nothing but you and animals and, you know, maybe a light somewhere far in the distance, and that's it. I mean, that is what I'm there for. I can't tell you how many times throughout the event I would stop and just look at the stars overhead, and look at the moon casting its light on the hard rocks and the cactus all around me, and just breathe in the air. And I would just say to myself, like, this is the best job in the world. Okay, I'm good. Since mile 100, or no, mile 80 or so, has been to just move pretty much non-stop for an hour. Take a 2 or 3 minute rest, get the pack off my shoulders, try to get as many carbs in as I can, a few good gulps of my scratch bottle. Really help my overall pacing. I'm actually moving faster until we hit that wind. But we're coming up right now on mile 130. I know that because that's where my next resupply and cache is. This morning, I've covered almost 30 miles, more than 20 of which was just brutal. Not because of the fatigue or the pain, but because it was on high cliffs with high wind. I was trying to get through there as fast as I could, but then when the gusts would pipe up, I'd kind of have to hunker against the wall, lower my center of gravity so it didn't catch my pack and pull me over. They're saying that the gusts of wind are, 45, 50 miles an hour. So, and up that high with nothing to break it up or protect you. It's just all constant sun, all constant wind. And the first time that I got like a really, really big gust, it pushed me and I kind of rolled my ankle and kind of had to catch myself before I went over. Not even a mile later, I got hit with another one, an even bigger one, and I felt this one. So I kind of bent my legs down and dropped my hips and just threw myself against the side, against the wall, to keep from getting pulled over and blown off the edge. It's my least favorite part of this whole thing, or at least the most challenging part. And it's like you come into these things prepared to hurt, prepared to push through doubt and pain and whatever else you're dealing with, but you don't come prepared to fight the wind. Anyway, a big gust hit me. I had to drop my hips and throw myself into the cliff wall. The problem was on this one that there was a big cactus growing in like a gap in the stone. So I pushed myself up into the cactus to keep from getting pulled over the edge by the wind. And the gust was 6 or 7 seconds long, just boom, 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 ascending, getting heavier. And so I had to just stand there with the cactus driving into the side of my body, my thighs, and not move, not react to that pain, because the wind was pulling at me so hard that if I had moved, it would have caught the drag on my pack and pulled me over the edge. So I just had to stay calm, let the cactus puncture my leg, and then once it passed, I pulled my leg out of the cactus and powered through until a place where there was a little bit more of a cubby to duck into. I pulled out as many of the big needles as I could, and then the last few hours just been dusting off the small ones. I can tell we're heading down into the green zone down there by the creek. That should be nice. I'll smell it before we get there too. Fucking dangerous when I'm well fed. I'm outright deadly when I'm not. Oh. I love the PCT in general. I just think it's a cool idea. I love the idea of like a long series of trails that really connect into one long trail that runs from Mexico to Canada. It is far more brutal than any ultramarathon course in terms of races, just because it's not really made for running, honestly. It's super steep. The ground is broken and rocky, and it's so remote that it's really hard to get supplied. Even with me having, you know, a whole team, we're still dealing with, you know, water cache every 25 miles and food cache every 50 and everything that goes along with that. It wasn't really about the PCT for this one. I wanted Sonora. I had never done anything in the desert. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable in the mountains, but I'm about as comfortable as a man can be without being complacent. You kind of think of it just like this dead place, but I mean, you watch a sunset or a sunrise in the desert, coming over the mountains through a canyon, it's beautiful. There's something about it.
Last year he did the Oregon route, and his 500 miles was a lot on the same trail. So now we're southern, taking on different elevation, different temperatures. So he seems to like the diverse challenge, while still having a clear route so that, you know, he doesn't just get lost in the desert and never come back. The Pacific Trail lends itself pretty well to easy to follow metrics. So I think that will also help him to track progress in the future and be able to have a much clearer progression or regression line in terms of difficulty.
It's a very hot trail. It can also be very cold at night. And I know sleeping in a tent alone at night would not be comfortable. Yeah, you just gotta be mentally tough to be able to stick it out.
Gluten-free macaroni and cheese and bison meat.
Tuck your shaking hands. There's bugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. 50 miles.
Almost done. It's impressive.
The truth is, stuff like this has always called to me. I find that when I do these challenges, particularly in like wild or hostile environments, those are the times when I feel the most like myself, when I feel like the truest version of who I am and who I'm supposed to be. When I walk around every day in a big city, you know, going through the motions of a standard life, I feel suffocated and incomplete. And to me, the risk to life and limb, the hardship, the discomfort that accompanies these wilderness challenges and ultramarathons that I do is a very, very small price to pay. I found when I started running the sense of liberty and freedom and peace. It was extremely powerful. And I'm a highly introverted person, and getting to be alone in the quiet and usually in the wilderness, I've always found to be extremely soothing. And some people find that strange because running is generally not what people consider peaceful or soothing or meditative, but it is. Basically, at a certain point, you have to decide, you know, if you're going to push yourself in a thing, you have to decide what approach you're going to take. For a lot of people, it's, you know, hey, I'd like to run faster, like I want to run a marathon as fast as I can. The call was more, how do I run longer distances in wilder places, essentially? Like, how do I push the envelope in that direction? And it isn't even so much about the additional difficulties, so much as about me finding myself, me seeking the human potential that I know is inside me, that's inside all of us, that lies dormant, you know, and sometimes we need dramatic action to wake that up, you know, to liven us to our purpose. And for me, running long distances in wild places with little or no help, it's the perfect recipe for me to activate that. You know, it's something in my mind, in my genes, in my spirit, however you want to break it down, something just activates for me when I'm in those situations. And that is when I know that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I was born in a gunfight, or at least right after one. As a grown man, I once asked my dad if he had been scared on that night. And he kind of took a moment before he answered. And instead of giving me a straight answer, he told me a story. He told me about Crazy Horse before the Battle of Little Bighorn, when a troop of U.S. cavalry had attacked a peaceful Indian village. And Crazy Horse and the other warriors had been out away from the village. And they heard the gunshots, and they saw the enemy charging the camp with their wives and their children and their parents in it. And so Crazy Horse jumped up on his mount, and he gathered his men on the hills above, and he looked at them, and all he said was, "Hoka-hey, let's go. It's a good day to die." And he turned and he rode off, and all of his men followed, and they wiped out George Custer and the 7th Cavalry before they could kill their families and their loved ones. That story is not about bravado or death. It's about living your life to the best you can every day, loving the people in it, loving yourself, and being the best man you can be every day of your life. That is the lesson that he was trying to teach me. And so he told me this story. He told me how the story went, how the story ended. And then he looked at me and he said, no, I wasn't afraid.